Imagine a giant vessel crossing the endless ocean. On its board is not just cargo, but hundreds and sometimes thousands of luxurious sports cars from the most famous world brands. This is not just transportation. This is millions, and sometimes billions of dollars, packed into steel, carbon, and engineering perfection. But everything can change in a matter of minutes. An unexpected accident, fire, or storm, and these cars, which were supposed to become someone's dream, turn into ashes or forever go to the bottom of the ocean. Over the last 10 years, about 21,900 cars were lost or seriously damaged in maritime incidents. The damage exceeded $1 billion, and this is only the cost of the cars themselves, without taking into account the losses of the vessels. Today, we will analyze 13 of the most expensive and destructive accidents involving car carriers in history: fires, collisions, capsizings. Stories in which thousands of cars disappear in a matter of hours. On the 4th of June, 2020, the container ship Ho Shaman was located in the port of Jacksonville, state of Florida, preparing for departure to Baltimore. Everything was going according to plan until the crew noticed smoke rising from the ventilation room. When they began the inspection, it turned out that a fire was already raging on the 8th deck. That is exactly where hundreds of used cars were located. The fire began to spread at a frightening speed. The flames engulfed the neighboring decks, turning the ship into a huge burning trap. The Jacksonville Fire and Rescue Service arrived to help, but the scale of the disaster turned out to be so serious that it took more than 1 week to eliminate the fire. 9 firefighters received injuries fighting the fire. Fortunately, all 21 members of the crew remained unharmed, but the ship itself and its cargo, 2,420 cars, were completely destroyed. The total damage amounted to about $40 million. Later, the vessel was towed to Turkey for recycling. The investigation by the National Transportation Safety Board revealed an alarming detail. All the cars on board were electric, but their batteries were not removed and properly secured. This created a risk of short circuits and damages during loading. Neither the personnel nor the crew attached any importance to this, and exactly this probably became one of the causes of the catastrophe. Motor vessel. Golden Ray is a giant car carrier which participated in the global logistics of cars for only 2 years, but this turned out to be enough to enter into history. The length of the vessel exceeded 2 football fields, and the height is comparable to a 17-story building. A huge diesel engine with a power of more than 17,000 horsepower allowed it to reach a speed of up to 20 knots. In September 2019, the vessel left the port of Brunswick in the state of Georgia, transporting 7,742 cars. But soon after departure, everything went wrong. Before this, loading and unloading operations were conducted in the port. Part of the cars were unloaded, others were loaded. After the completion of the operations, the ship continued its way to Baltimore, accompanied by a tugboat. The captain decided to perform a maneuver, first a turn of 10 degrees to the right, then another 20. And exactly at this moment, the vessel lost stability. The ship began to list sharply, and then capsized off the coast of St. Simon's Island. Fortunately, the entire crew was saved and did not suffer, but thousands of cars remained locked inside the overturned hull. This event became one of the most high-profile incidents in the history of automobile transportation. Felicity Ace is a car carrier with a carrying capacity of 17,700 tons, built in 2005. In February 2022, it received a task to transport about 4,000 cars from the German Emden to Rhode Island. But on the 16th of February, a fire broke out on board. Presumably, it started on the car deck and quickly spread throughout the entire vessel. Having realized the scale of the threat, the captain ordered the crew, 22 people, to leave the ship. The flames spread rapidly. The huge vessel, with a length of more than 650 feet, turned out to be completely engulfed in fire. Despite attempts to take it in tow, it was not possible to save the ship. After 2 weeks of drifting in the Atlantic, Felicity Ace went to the bottom. According to the estimates of the analysts of the Russell Group, the total damage could reach $438 million. The manufacturers of the cars lost another approximately 400 million. Volkswagen Group suffered especially. On board there was a multitude of Porsche, Audi, and Volkswagen cars with a total value of not less than $155 million. Later, lawsuits appeared. One of them was filed in Stuttgart, the city where the headquarters of Porsche is located. Another, in Brunswick, against Volkswagen Group. In total, there were 3,965 cars on board, including Bentley and Lamborghini models. This catastrophe became one of the most expensive in the history of automobile transportation. The Norwegian car carrier motor vessel Tricolor became a participant in one of the strangest and most destructive chains of accidents in the history of maritime transportation. In just 2 weeks, it found itself drawn into exactly 3 collisions in the English Channel, which led to serious damages, environmental pollution, and colossal losses in the automobile industry. Early in the morning of the 14th of December 2002, the vessel on board of which there were almost 3,000 BMW, Volvo, and Saab cars collided with the container ship Kariba, heading under the flag of the Bahamas. This happened approximately 20 miles to the north of the coast of France. At that moment, Tricolor was heading from Zeebrugge to Southampton. After the collision, Kariba was able to continue moving, but Tricolor turned out to be paralyzed. It turned over on its side and remained lying in water with a depth of about 98 feet. Fortunately, all 24 members of the crew were saved without injuries. They were evacuated with the help of Kariba and the tugboat Boxer. But it was not possible to save the cargo. 2,862 cars ended up on the bottom, as well as 77 units of heavy machinery, including tractors and crane equipment. The area of the sunken vessel was closed for navigation and was guarded by French military ships. It would seem that the danger was eliminated, but after only a few weeks, another emergency situation happened. On the 1st of January 2003, 2 vessels, Nicola and Vicky, collided with the sunken hull of Tricolor, not having noticed it in time. One of them was transporting 70,000 tons of gas oil. As a result, a spill of fuel occurred, which aggravated the ecological situation. This story became an example of how one accident can launch a chain reaction of consequences. In the year 2012, the car carrier Baltic Ace collided with the container ship Corvus J and sank in just 15 minutes. This happened approximately 15 nautical miles to the west of Rotterdam. On board, there were about 1,400 cars. Together with the vessel, they went to the bottom. But the most terrible was the human price. 11 members of the crew died. In addition, the ship was transporting more than 540,000 liters of fuel. After sinking, it lay on its side at a depth of 35 meters, leaving above itself only 10 to 12 meters of water. This created a serious threat for the environment. In order to avoid an ecological catastrophe, the Netherlands Ministry of Infrastructure and the Environment concluded a contract for a highly complex operation to raise the wreckage. The works began in May 2014 and finished only in October 2015. During this time, about 13,000 tons of metal were raised from the bottom, and 460,000 liters of fuel were extracted. For this, they applied the technology of hot tapping of fuel, analogous to the one that was used during the liquidation of the accident of the tanker Kyung-shin in Korea. The wreckage of the vessel was cut into 8 parts and raised in stages. This operation became one of the most complex in the history of rescue works at sea. January of 2015. The car carrier Her Osaka is heading from Southampton to Bremerhaven, transporting 1,450 luxurious cars. But soon after departure, a critical incident occurs. As the investigation showed, the real weight of the cargo significantly differed from the calculated one. This led to a violation of the stability of the vessel. When the ship was passing through the West Bramble area in the Solent Strait, it listed sharply to the right. The cargo began to shift. Water started to enter inside. Understanding the seriousness of the situation, the captain ordered to stop the engines, but it was already too late. The list reached 40 degrees. The rudder and the propeller ended up above the water, and control was practically lost. One of the crew members received serious injuries. He fell and flew 18 meters along the corridor, hitting against a door. This case became an important lesson for the entire industry. After it, the procedures for calculating loading and controlling the stability of vessels were reviewed. Cougar Ace is a huge car carrier, built in Japan in the year 1993. The vessel, with a length of more than 600 feet and a value of over $100 million, could transport more than 5,000 cars. In July 2006, the ship was performing a voyage, transporting 4,730 Mazda cars. The route passed through the Aleutian Islands off the coast of Alaska, and exactly there, everything went not according to plan. For an unknown reason, be it a technical failure or a human error, flooding occurred. The ship began to list sharply. The crew literally slid along the metal decks, not having the possibility to hold on. On board, there were 23 people, citizens of Singapore, Myanmar, and the Philippines. All of them were saved, but the ship itself listed by almost 90 degrees. During 5 days, the vessel drifted, approaching ever closer to the rocky coast. As a result, tugboats were involved, which were able to drag it to a safe zone and deliver it to the port of Dutch Harbor in Alaska. This story showed how quickly a situation can get out of control, even on a completely serviceable vessel. On the 10th of March 2019, the cargo vessel Grande America was performing a voyage from Casablanca to Hamburg. On board, there were 26 members of the crew and 1 passenger, as well as a huge cargo, more than 2,100 cars, diverse equipment, and hundreds of containers. Among the transported items, passenger cars, motorhomes, trucks, buses, construction equipment, and even 45 units of dangerous goods, including 16 different types of chemical substances. When the vessel was passing through the Bay of Biscay, approximately 140 nautical miles from the coast of France, a powerful fire broke out on the deck in the containers. The fire spread quickly and it became impossible to control it. The vessel began to slowly lose stability and go under the water. On the 11th of March, all 27 people on board were saved. They were evacuated with the help of the British frigate Her Majesty's ship Argyle and delivered to the port of Brest. But Grande America itself continued to sink, and as a result, went to the bottom to a depth of about 4,600 meters. The consequences did not make themselves wait. Already after 2 days, a reconnaissance plane of the French naval forces discovered a large oil slick with a length of about 6 miles. In addition, containers ended up thrown into the sea. A large-scale operation for the liquidation of the pollution began. About 10 vessels were involved in it, including ships of the French fleet, Spanish vessels, and specialized ships of the European Maritime Safety Agency. This was not just an accident, this was an ecological threat of an international scale. On the 26th of January 2016, the car carrier Modern Express, built in South Korea and registered in Panama, found itself in a critical situation in the Bay of Biscay. On board, there were 3,600 tons of cargo, heavy machinery, trucks, and timber. A strong storm became the cause of the fact that the vessel listed by 40 degrees. Control was lost, and the ship began to drift, carried away by the wind and the current. A distress signal was sent immediately. The Spanish rescue service Salvamento Maritimo reacted instantly. On the same day, all 22 members of the crew were evacuated with the help of helicopters. The vessel remained without control and continued to drift. A serious danger arose. If it had run aground, the consequences could have led to an ecological catastrophe. Attempts to take the ship in tow were undertaken several times, and only on the 1st of February, when the weather improved, the rescuers managed to secure the towing cable. Modern Express was towed to the port of Bilbao in Spain. There, during 3 weeks, they leveled it with the help of ballast systems. As a result, it was possible to save the vessel, but later it was written off and sent for recycling to Turkey. This was a story in which everything could have ended much worse. The car carrier Diamond Highway, built in the year 2004 and capable of transporting more than 6,000 cars, faced a series of incidents which turned its history into a real chronicle of catastrophes. On the 15th of June 2019, During a voyage from Singapore to the Philippines, a fire broke out on board. The crew, 25 people, was forced to leave the vessel. They were saved by a cargo vessel passing nearby. The fire raged for several days, until the Coast Guard and the firefighters of the Philippines were able to eliminate it. After this, the ship was towed to the port of Batangas for repair. But its history did not end on this. In December 2021, the vessel again got into an incident. This time, it ran aground because of Typhoon Rai, which took the lives of more than 400 people. And then, on the 28th of April, 2023, a fire broke out on board again. This time, the cause became the works on cutting metal in the bow part. Fortunately, all the personnel were evacuated in advance. But the incident itself reminded again how vulnerable such vessels are, even after repair. Diamond Highway became an example of how one problem can pull behind itself a chain of new ones. On the 24th of February 2017, the vessel Motor Vessel Honor departed from Southampton to Baltimore. But already at the beginning of the journey, a fire broke out on board. The signal about the incident arrived to the coastal services at 3 hours and 45 minutes in the morning. The crew acted quickly and competently. The fire extinguishing system was activated. The cargo compartment was hermetically closed in order not to allow the spread of the fire. The team continued to control the situation while the vessel independently returned to the port. The ship retained controllability and maneuverability, and the crew remained unharmed. This case became a rare example of how competent actions can prevent a catastrophe. The vessel Motor Vessel Courage, built in the year 1991, belongs to the type pure car and truck carrier. This is a special class of car carriers, capable of quickly adapting to different types of cargoes, thanks to built-in systems of transformation of decks. At the beginning of June 2015, the ship was heading from Bremerhaven to Southampton. On board, there were cars and household cargoes, but on the 2nd of June, everything changed. A powerful fire broke out on the vessel. The fire quickly engulfed the cargo spaces, causing serious damages not only to the ship itself, but also to all the cargo located inside. The damage turned out to be colossal, about $100 million. As a result, the owner made the decision to write off the vessel. The investigation of the National Transportation Safety Board revealed a probable cause: an electrical arc in the anti-lock braking system of one of the cars. Exactly, it could have become that spark which launched the chain reaction. Almost all the cars on board were destroyed by the fire. However, the crew worked maximally competently. Immediately after the alarm signal, the firefighting teams were deployed. The captain, the chief mate, and the chief engineer quickly evaluated the situation and activated the extinguishing system with the use of carbon dioxide. This allowed to localize the fire. The team also conducted the cooling of the external boundaries of the ignition zone and controlled the temperature, not trying to prematurely open the compartment, which could have caused a new surge of fire. As a result, no one died, and the vessel was able to continue the journey to the port. But this case became one more reminder. Sometimes the source of danger is hiding right inside the cargo. And finally, one of the most high-profile incidents of recent years. On the 25th of July 2023, the car carrier Fremantle Highway found itself in the center of a catastrophe off the coast of the Netherlands, next to the island of Ameland. The vessel was heading from Bremerhaven to Port Said, with the final destination point in Singapore. On board, there were about 3,000 cars, intended for sale in Asia. Exactly at this moment, a fire broke out on the ship. The fire spread rapidly. The crew tried to cope with it by their own forces, but very quickly it became clear the situation is getting out of control. People began to save themselves by any means. Some jumped from a height of more than 30 meters straight into the sea in order to avoid the flames. As a result of the tragedy, one member of the crew died, another 22 received injuries. The fire continued for several days. The rescue services cooled the hull of the vessel, pouring water on it, but at the same time avoided excessive flooding because of the risk that the ship could lose stability and sink. According to preliminary data, the batteries of the electric cars located on board could have become the cause of the ignition. This incident became one more alarming signal for the entire industry, especially against the background of the growth of transportation of electric cars. Each of these stories is not just an accident. This is a reminder of how fragile even the most well-thought-out system can turn out to be when it collides with the reality of the open ocean. Thousands of cars, millions of dollars, human lives. All of this can be put on the line in one moment. Fires, mistakes, weather conditions, technical failures. There can be many causes, but the outcome is always one. The ocean dictates its own rules, and as long as these giant ships continue to move along its surface, there remains only one question. How many more such stories does the depth hide?